everyone, it's Melanie here with Vintage Hill Studio. Today I'm going to be working way out of my comfort zone doing some loose watercolor roses. It's by a true beginner, that's me. I am not excellent at watercoloring, but I think this came out okay. And I was inspired by Shada Campbell on YouTube, so I'll go into that a little bit later. For my background, I'll be using a page out of this Reader's Digest book from the 1940s. This is a dilapidated old book that was ready for the trash, but I have rescued it and I'm using the pages for some of my cards. So this is a 5 by 6.5 inch card base, and I'll be using a book page mat that's 4 3/4 by 6 1/4. Alright, I've already got that cut down. Now I thought I'd branch right into my watercolor here and add a little background colors. I've already added water to the cakes that I wanted to use, and I've got those all mixed up in the little clear palette here. So you can see I'm just dipping a flat brush in my water and in a little turquoise looking color, and I just want a wash of color. This is going to be the background behind my roses, and I want it really light and really subtle. So I just go back and forth between the water and my paper towel. I intensify the color just a bit because I don't want to distract from my roses. I just want it to add a little more color to this book page. Alright, these pages are really old, so they really absorb the color well. Now I'm just adding a few splashes with that same aqua color. And then I'll go in and pull a little bit of that brown around the edges just to give it a more aged look. Now you can see when I cut this page down into a mat, I've got that rather wide border over to the right, but that's okay. This is all organic. This whole card is very organic feeling, and so I'm just going to go around the edges to intensify them a bit. This does not have to be perfect. It's just adding a little more color to this plain book page. So you can see I kind of go at an angle here on the corners, going around the sides, again just getting a little more color for my background that will be behind the roses. So just as a caveat, I found Shada Campbell on YouTube, and she has the best videos on how to watercolor. She does several, she is really talented. She shows you how to do several flowers, shows you how to do some of the leaves, and says to practice. And I practiced a little bit, but then I jumped right into this video for my card making. So again, I am by no means, I didn't practice as much as Shada probably wishes people would, but I think it came out okay. Alright, so I've got all that color applied to my mat here, the book page mat, and then I'm going to put it in this Cuttlebug embossing folder, and this is just several leaves and dots. And you can see I ran it through my embossing and while it was still damp, and look at that beautiful embossed impression that it leaves. Just gorgeous. So it doesn't crack the paper if you run it through while it's still damp. Now I'm going to set that aside and let that dry while I work on my beginner watercolor roses. Okay, here's a 140 pound watercolor paper, and I was just telling you, remember that ugly duckling stage. Now there's the YouTube video that I watched, the loose watercolor flowers practice for beginners. So look up Shada on YouTube there, and you too will be inspired. So here we go. A very beginner's approach to a watercolor rose here. I'm using a number 4 watercolor brush. It's probably not the best brush ever, but I'm doing what Shada said and kind of making some swirls, and then you're supposed to do light pressure, heavy pressure, light pressure to make these outer petals. And I am not by any means as talented as Shada. Again, remember the ugly duckling story, and there is a good moral to the story, and this turns out better than I had hoped it would. So I just keep working on it here. Now, I don't have the same technique that Shada demonstrates, but this again is a beginner with no watercolor experience here. And I go in and kind of pull some of that color around because some of the lines there with the white is a little too big for how shaded demonstrates. So I'm just filling in a little bit with some lighter washes of color, and then I'm coming back with those kind of C strokes around the edge of my rose, and I'm pulling the color out, trying my best to follow Shada's direction, but again, my own technique for these. See, there is hope. It wasn't too bad, really. So I went ahead and did my other roses, some I like better than others, and then I'm going to add my little stems and leaves. Again, Jada's technique is much better because she is a very talented watercolor artist, and I am not. But I would like to have some credit for jumping in and just trying this. Now I plan on cutting these roses apart to create a card, so this is not like a composition on a piece of watercolor paper that you would want to keep as is. This is just my rough watercoloring of things that I have intended to cut out to create a card. So again, is there any right or wrong way to do art? No, there is not. Just do what appeals to you and go with it. Now you can see on one of these leaves I get a little close to the edge, and that's okay because it's going to have a flat end on one of my leaves, and I plan on putting that along the border of that book page mat. So do not despair about that. There's my roses with their little leaves. Now I'm going to bring over this Winter Leaves die set from Sizzix. I want it to make something that resembles a little bit of baby's breath. So I'm going to cut that out of my excess watercolor paper here. And I'll use my Spellbinders tool-in-one to help me get that out. There we go. And then I'm going to use some of those same colors that I used to watercolor the rose, plus a peach. I did 3 of those branches. I'm going to use my watercolors and get these colored in. And then I will add that to my card composition. So again, bringing over that same green. I'm just going to do one of these so you don't have to sit through this whole thing, because this video is a little bit long, but it had a lot of steps involved, and I wanted to show you what the process was. Again, I'm bringing over a little bit of a peachy color so that it doesn't match exactly to my roses. I'm starting with this peach base, and then I'll bring over that darker pink, and I'm going to add some color to these little baby's breath sprays. This is probably really berries, but I call it baby breath sprays because that was my intention to stick down in between these roses. So here I'm coming back with some of that pink, and I'm just going along the edges to define those little circles of baby's breath, or berries, whatever you want to call it. Just adding a little splash of color, but again, I did not want these to blend in completely with my roses, so that's why I started with the peach, and I'm just coming back and adding a little bit of that pink so that it all coordinates. Hey, this was really so much fun to try. I hope that you will give it a try too, and don't worry whether you're very good at watercolor or not. The whole definition of loose watercolor is that you get the idea that it's a rose, and wait till you see how this card came out. I mean, once I get these all cut apart and it's less distracting because they won't be side by side on one sheet of watercolor paper, it actually came out pretty well. I was kind of proud of myself for A, trying this, not being intimidated by doing watercolor, and B, getting this card put together. So you can see here I'm going to take my little cutter bee scissors here and cut around the edges. I'm trying not to leave a lot of white border around the roses or the leaves. And of course these are pretty easy to cut out. So I'll get each of these cut out, and then I will be ready to work on getting this card put together. Okay, so there you get the idea of how easy that is to cut out. And there are all 4 of my roses. Now I was trying to decide which rose I was going to use. I really didn't like that bottom one too much, so I didn't add leaves to it. But now when I look at it, I'm thinking that's not a bad rose. All right, there's that book page mat. It's all dry. It's ready to be put down on the front of my card. I like to use liquid adhesive because this gives me a little wiggle room to make sure I've got this straight on the front of my card, or as straight as possible. Using my grid mat to make sure my card is straight before adding my mat. And then I am going to carefully use my fingers to get this put down. I don't want to smash down that embossing that we did. I hope you can see some of that embossing here from the video. And now I'm going to just play around with these roses. I like to kind of cluster them close together. I'm just kind of moving around with my colors and the shapes of the roses. Of course, they're all unique and different because each one of them is hand painted watercolor. And I plan on sticking 2 of them down with liquid adhesive and 1 with some foam tape. And then here I can add in my little baby's breath or berries and kind of fill in some of that space. Now you see my background that I watercolored, as it dried back quite a bit lighter, so it just adds just a little pop of interest with that brown and turquoise. I think it's the perfect background for these beautiful roses rather than just a plain book page. Okay, there is that one with the leaf that was a little bit stunted. I got that put down first so it can butt up against that edge of the book page mat. And then I'm adding my second rose, just still playing around here. And on the third rose, I actually used some foam tape. You can see I've already got that on the back of my rose. I'll take off that release paper and get that one put down as well. Now by doing the middle rose with a little pop-up of foam tape here, this is going to give me a little leeway so that I can tuck that baby's breath in around the roses. See? Need to clip off some of those stems every now and then, or simply add the adhesive, liquid adhesive, and just get those kind of tucked in. So again, that foam tape allows me to tuck a few additional items in underneath that center rose. Look how this is coming together, y'all. I have never done these roses before with watercolor. And are they as good as shade as? No, they're not as good as many watercolor artists, but I was kind of proud of the way these came out. You start putting these down on your card here, and you look back at it and you go, hey, that isn't too bad. It really isn't. You do get the idea that it's a rose. I guess it's all in the perception as well. So I'm just tucking in this little last piece of my baby's breath here. And you can see I did not glue all the way to the tips of the baby breath because I want to kind of curl it up a little bit for some dimension. Now I've got this beautiful die stamp that says beautiful actually, and it's from Simon Says Stamps. It is a scripty word beautiful as well as a background die. So I chose to use that same ivory that's in the card base, and I'm going to back this gold scripty word beautiful with that. And I found this wonderful little waxy pencil at a Great American Scrapbook Convention, and it works great with picking up little things like the eye, the dot on the eye, or beads or anything. Okay, now where to put this? Let's play around with this just a bit to see what looks good. I don't really want to cover up all of my roses, so I'm just going to concentrate down in this right hand corner and get the word beautiful put on the front of my card. You can see how well this is all coming together, and I'm actually liking that rose that I decided not to use over there on the left hand side. I'll save that for another project. So there we go. I hope you can see the shine there on that gold. And that completes my card for today. I hope you enjoyed this video, that you will feel free to leave me some comments or subscribe. If you're watching from your mobile phone, there's a little subscribe down in the description on YouTube. If you're watching from your laptop, you can subscribe anywhere during this, using that subscribe button during the video here or at the end of the video. I would love to have you as a subscriber. I post weekly videos and I'm always trying new things, and I am so thankful to all of my current subscribers, and I hope you'll come back and see me again next week. Happy crafting, everyone!